tonight's community conversation. For those of you who I haven't met already, I'm Lauren Underwood. I am honored to be your representative for the 14th Congressional District. The 14th District stretches from DeKalb in the north all the way to Utica and Ottawa, and then out east in Joliet and Aurora, and then west to Spring Valley. And as a registered nurse, I came to Congress to protect and expand access to affordable health care. I'm now in my 4th term, and I've had 19 pieces of legislation signed into law under both President Trump and President Biden. I've also helped bring home more than $1.7 billion in federal funding for our communities. And throughout my time in Congress, I've been working hard for you to support our community with federal resources and programs to make sure that Northern Illinois has a strong voice in Washington. I will always put that mission first, but we are in a very different moment right now, my friends. Every single day, Donald Trump and this administration are attacking our Constitution and the institutions that have made our democracy and our country a beacon to the entire world. Our healthcare is under attack, and the outright corruption coming out of this White House is shameful and completely unacceptable. ICE and the Department of Homeland Security are out of control, trampling over our constitutional rights and snatching people off of our streets. People are horrified by what's happening in Gaza and these images that we're seeing of children starving in the streets. And so let me be very, very clear here. This war has got to end. The people in Gaza need food, they need water, and they need support rebuilding after the criminal and intolerable devastation over the last 2 years. Every hostage must be returned. And we need to make real progress towards peace and stability and self-determination for the Palestinian people, including showing support in Congress. In Illinois, despite Donald Trump's promises to bring down the cost of living, it feels like hard work is rewarded less and less, and the American dream feels more out of reach than ever before. I know that we're all feeling this every day. It's impossible to avoid it. So I want to begin here by reaffirming this for everyone in this room. My dedication and my commitment to our Northern Illinois community is stronger than ever, because you deserve better. If you play by the rules and you work hard, you deserve to live a good life. You and your family deserve health care that's affordable and available when you need it. You deserve a government that works for you. That's what I'm fighting for and what House Democrats are fighting for, and I mean it. When you walked in here today, you should have received a packet, and I'm going to reference it a lot. Pages 2 through 6 break down all of this chaos for you point by point, and you can find specifics on how I'm pushing back on it while remaining focused on supporting you, your family, and our community. Now, House Republicans are perfectly happy to let Trump take control away from Congress every day. They're so afraid of him, they closed Congress early and sent us all home rather than release the Epstein files. But from this shady Epstein cover-up to his cryptocurrency schemes to the way that he's stolen your tax dollars and handed them to his fellow lawbreakers and billionaire friends. No matter how much he wants to act like one, Donald Trump is not a king. I'm committed to telling the truth. I'm committed to our Constitution and to upholding Congress's power as a co-equal branch of government. I'm hyper-focused on making sure that our priorities and our voices are strongly represented and our values are protected. So when I'm not in Washington for votes, I'm here in the 14th District to serve our community and listen to you. And what I've heard is a deep fear and anxiety about what this administration is doing, and a deep sense of outrage as they tear down what we built to make Donald Trump and his billionaire friends richer. Local government leaders are losing critical infrastructure dollars that keep our water safe and clean. Seniors are panicked about what's happening to their health care and prescription drug costs. Funding for our firefighters and first responders, funding that Congress signed into law, is being deliberately frozen or delayed. Our phones have been ringing nonstop with calls from organizations, domestic violence shelters, food banks, after-school programs for our kids, all of them unsure if they're going to be able to keep their doors open because the Trump administration and House Republicans are going after their critical funding. And this isn't future funding either. These are our tax dollars that we pay to the federal government that they're now stealing from our communities. None of this is normal, and none of it is okay. But just know that we are not backing down. On pages 5 and 6 in your packets, you'll find more information about how I'm working to protect the organizations and programs that keep our communities strong. Like the legislation I helped introduce immediately after Trump announced that DOJ was trying to access our private taxpayer data, and the amendments I passed this spring in the Appropriations Committee to stop the Department of Homeland Security from using federal dollars to violate our constitutional rights. My colleagues and I are fighting back in Congress, in the courts, and out in our communities, and friends, we're winning critical victories. So far, more than 357 cases have been filed by people all over the country, directly challenging Donald Trump's agenda. The courts have already ruled against him in over 200 of those cases. Trump's moves are being met with constant pushback. As I'm sure you've seen in the news, we've been very successful at winning emergency action. And so I wanted to go over some of those. When he tried to put a blanket freeze on all federal funding, that's money that supports critical infrastructure projects here in the 14th, our first responders and firefighters, our public health, and dozens of organizations doing critical work for our neighbors, we spoke out loudly, lawsuits were filed, we won, and we forced them back. When Trump tried to take away one of our constitutional rights and end birthright citizenship for people across the country, we took him to court, and multiple district courts stopped that executive order. And when the Supreme Court issued a narrow ruling saying that his executive order could go forward, even more legal challenges followed, and his order has been halted once again. Time and again this year, we have defeated them in court, and we've protected collective bargaining rights for workers. We've stopped them from pulling critical funding, reproductive health care funding for Planned Parenthood. We've defended our LGBTQ+ community and more. The Trump administration's actions threaten the health, safety, and well-being of our community, and that's why I oppose them so strongly. None of this is about waste, fraud, and abuse like they're claiming. It's more politics, more corruption from the Republicans in charge. Slash your Social Security and Medicare to make themselves richer. Get rid of school lunches to make themselves richer. Close our national parks to make themselves richer. Fire veterans and those who serve them at the VA to make themselves richer. They're trying to destroy as much of the federal government as possible so that taxpayer dollars end up in their pockets instead. It's that simple. Now, before I get to your questions, I want to talk about the dangerous tax scam that Republicans passed last month, the Big Ugly Bill. First, I want you to know that my Democratic colleagues in the House and I did absolutely everything within our power in the minority to stop this bill. But Republicans pushed the whole thing through while you were sleeping, doing all of their work in the middle of the night. The Democrats stayed in the Capitol for about 48 hours straight, fighting it every step of the way. We were sleeping on the ground, and some people didn't go home for days. If you happened to be watching C-SPAN while the bill was moving through the House, you would have seen me delivering a speech from the House floor at 1:30 in the morning. I also testified at their hearing against the devastating health care cuts in this bill and pushed to extend the popular tax credits from my legislation, the Health Care Affordability Act. Because of the Health Care Affordability Act, we saw record-breaking enrollment with more than 24 million Americans signing up for marketplace coverage this year. Donald Trump's own pollster and Republican senators like Josh Hawley of Missouri are telling Republicans that these tax credits from this law are popular and highly supported by swing district and Trump voters alike. But Republicans rejected my amendment anyways. Now, these popular tax credits are going to expire at the end of this year, on December 31st. And because the Republicans have refused to extend them, Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Illinois announced just a couple weeks ago that they are increasing premiums by 27% next year. You may have heard in the news that the big ugly bill is the largest health care cut in our nation's history. Well, this is just one of the many ways, even if you are not on Medicare or Medicaid, that this will affect you. If you get your health care through Get Covered Illinois, you're paying less right now because the tax credits are in effect and because those tax credits are covering part of your premium. But since the Republicans have refused to extend these tax credits, it means that you're going to have to pay a higher out-of-pocket premium cost. And then on top of that, the premium price is going to increase by 27%. In our community, the average cost increase is going to be $930 next year. That's an outrageous increase, especially since it's happening to pay for the big ugly bills, handouts to billionaires. It's a 1-2 punch that means the cost of your health care is going to go up in most, if not every way. And that's just in Illinois. The data show that similar increases in premiums will be implemented from providers in states all across the country, anywhere from 8 to 24%. The bill cuts more than $1 trillion, that's with the T, trillion dollars from healthcare, including the largest Medicaid cut ever, and it will cause a $500 billion cut to Medicare. Hospitals and nursing homes are going to close, and they will never come back, putting a further strain on our healthcare system. And studies in the last month show that Illinois will be hit harder than any other state in the country because of these cuts, okay? There are 579 nursing homes in our country that are on the chopping block, and 94 of those nursing homes are in our state. If you get healthcare coverage from your employer, this affects you as well, because providers, doctors and nurses and clinics all across our community are going to raise the cost of care for everyone. In addition to the outright cuts, they're also trying to make it more difficult for people to get their health care with new requirements. You may have heard of these requirements. They're calling them work requirements, but they're really just more barriers and more hoops for people to jump through that will push people off of their health care altogether. And friends, there's no evidence, none, that this is good policy, but overwhelming evidence that seniors and people with disabilities and people with substance use disorders, that those folks are going to lose their health care altogether. And that's the point. That's what Republicans are trying to do. Now, Medicaid is administered at the state level, so you're going to need to contact your state representative if you need help navigating these Medicaid cuts. And I would advise, if you're on Medicaid, that you get started now. But Medicare is a federal program, and my office can help you navigate Medicare changes. So many of the changes to these programs are slated to take effect in January 2027, but Medicare's open enrollment runs from October 15th through December 7th every year, so you can call our office if you are looking at your options. So, because Republicans are in charge, even with every Democrat voting no, we couldn't stop them from passing the big ugly bill. In this bill, they've attacked women and our reproductive rights by pulling critical funding from Planned Parenthood. They've eliminated tax credits and clean energy and environmental programs that were helping us make progress in the fight against climate change. And they've dismantled programs that are feeding hungry kids. And all of it is being done to give more tax breaks to billionaires, and it's going to add about $4 trillion to the deficit. The bill is ugly, it's terrible, but Donald Trump was right about one thing. It is big. And there are a couple positive things in the legislation that I do think are worth covering. There are small reforms in the tax code that will benefit employees by eliminating the federal income tax on tips. That is good in concept, but in this bill it's implemented poorly. Republicans have purposely made who will qualify for this no tax on tips benefit extremely narrow, and it will expire after 4 years. The bill also temporarily raises the state and local tax deduction from $10,000 to $40,000. That relates to your property taxes. Raising the tax deduction will help working families here in our community, and it's something that I've been working on since I first got to Congress. But again, Republicans made it narrow. And it's only temporary, so families in our community are only going to see relief for the next 5 years. But in 2030, it will snap back to just $10,000. And it also still penalizes married couples and unfairly limits their tax deduction. So we have a lot of work to do. I have legislation to fix it, obviously, and fix it permanently. It's called the SALT Fairness for Working Families Act, and it's described on page 12 in your packet. So separate from your packet, you all should have gotten 2 handouts. One's a timeline that looks like this, and that's a timeline for when things will go into effect. And I encourage everyone to take a look at that document and make sure that you apply for those resources before the big ugly bill takes them away. So things like the electric vehicle tax credit, which now only applies to purchases made before September 30th, so just like 6 more weeks. Or the tax credits that Democrats secured for solar upgrades to your home. Those tax credits were supposed to go until 2035, and now they'll be expiring on December 31st of this year. Take down those deadlines and reference your packet, or you can call our office if you need help getting resources so that you can get those benefits. And in the packet, the electric vehicle tax credit and the solar information is on page 11. So again, friends, I've worked hard to deliver results for our community, and I'm going to keep working to hold this administration accountable and bring down the cost of living, create more good jobs for our middle class, and make sure that federal funding keeps coming home to our neighborhoods. I know that things are hard right now. I feel it too, and I really want to thank you so much for showing up today and being such engaged, active members, citizens in our government and in our democracy. Your attendance and engagement today is so meaningful, and it's one of the things that lifts me up and gives me so much hope that we're going to get through this. And I really do believe that we'll get through this together. I'm honored to represent you in Congress, and I'm going to continue my work to strengthen our community and make sure it's a place where everyone can thrive. And on that note, I do want to close with some uplifting wins and some good news, and then I promise that I'll get to your questions. So first, you heard me talk about my work on the Appropriations Committee. This spring, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem appeared before our committee where she refused to affirm our basic constitutional rights after I pressed her on where she stood in our questioning. And after her appearance, I was able to amend our federal funding bill to make sure that no federal resources can be used by the Department of Homeland Security to violate our constitutional rights, like our right to free speech, unfair searches, our right to due process in a court of law, or our right to a fair and speedy trial. I also included an amendment to protect the public's right to record ICE officers and immigration enforcement actions in public, okay? We've protected funding for the Veterans Crisis Line, and we've made sure maternal health care was represented in a new rural health care program. Now second, one of my most important roles as your representative in Congress is something that we call constituent services, or casework. There's more on this on page 56 in your packet. This is about serving you, helping you navigate federal agencies, like getting your passport taken care of, or your IRS issues worked through, or problems with the Postal Service solved, or fixing any issues that you may have with immigration or visas. I'm so pleased to report that our office is about to cross a very exciting milestone in terms of the number of people we've served. As of July 31st, we've closed almost 9,000 of these cases since I first came to Congress, and we've helped return more than $29 million to our constituents. That includes $1 million that we recently got returned to a local skilled nursing facility, which is something that's so important in light of these Republican attacks on Medicare and Medicaid. So that's fantastic news for our community, but Team Underwood is always striving for greatness, right? And so we want to cross that 10,000 threshold and $30 million number as soon as we can to get you all the support that you deserve. So please reach out to our office if you need help navigating federal agencies or getting your benefits. We have an excellent team of caseworkers, and they will be delighted to help you. You can give us a call at 630-549-2190 or visit us online at underwood.house.gov. Okay, one last piece of good news to share, although there's certainly more. So last month, Democrats and Republicans came together to pass my Baby Changing on Board Act unanimously out of the House. And this is bipartisan legislation that I wrote to require every new Amtrak train to have proper facilities on board so that new moms and dads can help them take care of their kids while traveling safely across the country.
And anybody, that could happen to anybody.
Carmen, thanks for your question. So I want to just rephrase it a little bit, because it's not about their rights, it's all of our rights. That this Department of Homeland Security is violating our constitutional rights as they conduct immigration enforcement across the country, including in our district. We've had ICE come through Joliet and go down a busy residential street across from some kids playing outside at a park, crashing into cars, hopping out of a unmarked vehicle with military fatigues and military-style guns without any kind of identifying agency with a masked face and snatch somebody out of a car. That's happened here in the 14th. And ICE is not in any way responsive to our inquiries from my office about what's going on. It's terrifying. What we know for sure is the U.S. Constitution and the Fifth Amendment says that all persons are allowed due process. That's not limited to U.S. citizens. And this department and the Trump administration are not affording all persons the right to due process. We know that U.S. citizens have been deported. We know that U.S. citizens have been detained. We know that U.S. citizens have been snatched off the streets in this country. This can happen to any of us, to all of us. And so if you have someone knock on your door, for example, and they don't identify themselves, and they do not produce paperwork like a warrant, you don't have to let them in. If you are a business owner or a farmer or have other property across our community, you do not have to let someone onto your property without that kind of identification or court order. That feels like an opportunity for the American people to take action. I believe that in a majority, Donald Trump is, I'll say it like this, Donald Trump is very scared that they're gonna lose. Donald Trump is so scared that they're gonna lose the House that he directed Greg Abbott in Texas to do a mid-cycle redistricting effort to try to steal 5 seats, right? Including some in violation of the Voting Rights Act, which is federal law. And so, that kind of desperation and weakness is on full display for the American people to see. And in this country, we the people have power. And in this country, we the people get to choose our representatives. And so even when they try to rig the system, we can still go vote. Okay? So that's your first part. Second part is we are winning in court. That record of success is clear. Now, some of these cases are being filed by individuals or in class actions. And some of these cases are being filed by people like our Attorney General, Kwame Raoul, our Illinois Attorney General. What I want you to know about the lawsuits is that I, as your congressperson, cannot file a lawsuit on your behalf. We are not considered like an impacted party. And so that's why I'm sharing with you the information. So if you're someone who knows that your tax records were accessed and your data was misused, or you're someone who's harmed by the Medicare cuts or something like, these different things that the administration's doing, then that's an opportunity for you to take action. And if you need help or resources, we can point you in the direction. Recommendation is to go ahead and get vaccinated, because vaccines are safe and effective, and they are completely dismantling that system that allows for things to be officially recommended and then covered by insurance. And that might not happen immediately within the next year, the impact on insurance coverage for all vaccines, but that is certainly within their policy objectives. And so I think that, it might be worth starting to have a conversation with your healthcare providers around what they will continue to offer in this community. And I really do mean that specifically about this community, because I know that the healthcare infrastructure in this community is very fragile. And it is a very deep concern. So, in my opening comments, I talked about how hospitals and nursing homes are going to close, right? Like, we are very worried about what's happening here in the Illinois Valley. Very worried about the, not just closure of facilities, but just services, right? So even if a facility remains open, if you're not able to get, necessary procedures, or there's no longer an emergency department, or if there's no longer an OB clinic, or if there's no longer, all these different radiology or whatever services that you need, that will have cascading and devastating impacts. And I think that we all know how sensitive the situation is here, and the way that we have seen consolidation in your healthcare system in the Illinois Valley, meaning there's basically one provider. And that provider does not offer, no, you're right, yep. And that provider does not offer comprehensive healthcare. And so we've seen, I've heard from many members of the community, and not just LGBTQ plus members of our community, who are very concerned about the closure of your Planned Parenthood and the inability to get comprehensive sexual and reproductive health care. And I'm very worried about the upcoming closures of these nursing homes. I think a lot of people have made assumptions about end-of-life care based on certain facilities being available. And when those facilities begin to close, which I think will happen kind of like dominoes, it'll happen quickly once they start occurring, I think that will be very disruptive for people's health care and outcomes. I think it'll be very challenging for families and communities, and really devastating, because folks are gonna need a high level of care that will not be provided in our community, in the Illinois Valley anymore, or not in the same way. And so I think that there's a level of preparation and decision making that is needed now, because that big ugly bill was signed into law, and because the source of misinformation, Robert Kennedy, was made Secretary of HHS. We just know where we're headed. And, please go vote. And every election where you have an opportunity, because these things are being decided by elections, including your local elections, right? And I think it's extremely important, if you care about healthcare access and strong public health infrastructure, that you make that a consideration as you go vote.
And do you think that DC needs some Democratic-backed troops in case something like another January 6th tries to happen again? That Temple and Don skated. I feel your angst, and a lot of us in this room, I think, and we don't need a civil war, but we're 50-50 in this country, and he's pulling the strings to get to 50.5%, and try to be president for a third term. I agree with you that the breaking of the Constitution, going all over the place, up and down, anything that he can put his claws into, you can't respond to that, I know, because it'll be ammunition in the press. But
Okay.
I'm talking to you. I don't know what to do.
Okay, yes, sir. So here's what I can tell you about a few things that you raised. Number one, let's just talk about current state of affairs in the House of Representatives. Current state of affairs in the House of Representatives, the Republicans have a majority by 3 votes. That's it. 3 seats. That is still the case. Some people died. There are some vacancies. Those vacancies will be filled, right? They have a 3-seat, okay, majority. Okay, we have a 3-seat majority. They do. That's just a fact. It's not that big, is my point. To the last question. Second fact, the District of Columbia, I support DC statehood, we need DC statehood. This is done. When you have DC statehood, it can't happen. Okay? Number 3, Pam Bondi, the U.S. Attorney General, cannot take over the DC Metro Police Department. It is not legal. So Pam Bondi can go on TV and say whatever it is that she wants to say, but it doesn't mean that she can do it. Okay, I know that wasn't your question, but it's true. Number 4, the crime in the District of Columbia is similar to crime in other cities. But I think, sirs, that is more likely to occur is the way that they've gone to LA, the way that they've gone to DC. We know that they have Chicago in their sights. The common thread are cities with black mayors. So far. I think we can be clear about what they're doing here. And so that's a short list, of which Chicago's on that list. Okay, and so I think a question for all of us is, how do we respond when it happens to us? And how do we maybe support our friends, family, and neighbors when that happens to us? The last thing I'll say is this. I was in the Capitol, obviously, on January 6th. I was there at work that day. It was awful. And it was a devastating insurrection that was allowed to continue on because the National Guard did not come to help us. They left us there. That's how I feel about it. And so I do not take these troops who sacrifice in service to our country, I don't take that seriously, right? Like, they're not there to be political pawns in some like chess match to be deployed by red governors or blue governors for a political outcome. And that's the only issue that I have with what you said, sir. Well, I shouldn't say only, but that's a concern I have about what you said, sir. I don't think that that is the role of the National Guard. And I believe that we have to really, in an effort to respond to this moment, to what this other woman said, really have to be careful about how we call upon people who are willing to put their lives on the line in service to our country. And I believe what Donald Trump has done with the use of the National Guard and these other federal law enforcement officers arresting DoorDash drivers trying to deliver breakfast to people across the District of Columbia is a disgrace. And I don't think that's something that we should be emulating here in Illinois.
And I think that brings us to...
But I have so many friends and family members who their religion is Fox News. And it doesn't matter if the evidence is there. It doesn't matter if you show them the facts and the sources. They're just like Trump. Now they just say fake news. How do we get some of those people back? There's a lot of my friends who are blue-collar workers in the unions, and they were huge Democratic supporters. And they're not. They're on the, they're on the other side. And I don't. What's the strategy? Does the Democratic Party have a strategy for that? Because I don't see how we get those people back.
So, Glenn, again, I'm not here in a campaign function, right, to advocate for the Democrats. I'm more so trying to inform you on what we're working on in Washington. And I can tell you that we have seen in our congressional district a real splintering in how people are getting their news, that they are watching a range of, if they are watching TV, they're watching a range of channels, including very popular Newsmax and One America Network, But an increasing share of people in our community are getting their news online. And they are not engaging in any way with any journalists, ever. And so, you know, I think what that means is that that news feed that we see, and it's called different things on different platforms, but you know, that initial feed on Facebook and Instagram and X, and you know, the way that the algorithms are working on TikTok and these other Snap for the young people, you know, like these algorithms are working in a specific way, and the content from friends and family and people that they know often is the ones that are most prominently displayed. And so I think that for the people in your life who you know are not interacting with journalists, perhaps you may consider sharing information in the format that they choose, which may